It's Thursday, and let's get started. A lot of bullet points to get through today. What's going on in Washington is illegal. The leaks coming out that ousted Michael Flynn, General Michael Flynn, illegal. We'll talk about that. Could somebody be going to jail besides former General Michael Flynn? Possibly. We have a replacement for him as well. Plus, Debbie Stabenow will weigh in on that. We'll talk about Chuck Schumer and what he has to say about it. And one of the Secretary Cabinet positions withdraws. We'll talk about that as the Labor Secretary is up for grabs again. We'll talk about all of that straight ahead. Plus, we'll have Congressman Tim Walberg on the program, Dr. Schlachter, Dutch Martin, and a whole lot more. It's a fully packed show. What else would you expect on a Thursday? It's the Steve Gruber Show.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
We're coming to a crossroads in America. We are coming to a crossroads because of the obstruction of the Democrats who can't figure out how they lost in November, and their panic and their need to blame somebody and their hysteria are bringing dangerous actions to the surface of Washington. For example, sensitive intelligence is being withheld from the President of the United States by intelligence officials because they believe they know better and that they think that information could be compromised. The Wall Street Journal reporting yesterday that in some cases officials opted not to show the president at all how it collected information. The paper, citing both former and current officials, said the decision to hold back information underscores the mistrust between the executive branch and the intelligence community. Democrat and Congressman Adam Schiff, ranking member of the House Intel Committee, said he has heard about these concerns in the past. I've talked with people in the intel community who do have concerns about the White House, about the president, and I think those concerns take a number of forms. What the intelligence community considers their most sacred obligation is to protect the very best intelligence and to protect the people that are producing it. The report points out that historically, intelligence officials have held back information about how spies gather information, but in those cases, the information was not held back due to concerns over the president's trustworthiness. In January, Charles Schumer of New York took on Trump over his criticism of the intel service. Let me tell you, you take on the intel community, they have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you, he said on MSNBC, and apparently that's what's happening. The officer of the Director of National Intelligence denied the accusation late Wednesday that intelligence officials were withholding information from the president. Any suggestion that the U.S. intelligence community is withholding information in not providing the best possible intelligence to the president and his national security team is simply not true. The Week magazine published an article Tuesday about how America's spies took down Michael Flynn. Damon Linker, a senior correspondent, wrote, "These leaks are an enormous problem, and in a less polarized context, they would be recognized immediately for what they clearly are, an effort to manipulate public opinion for the sake of achieving a desired political outcome. It is weaponized spin." The Week magazine, by the way, is no conservative rag. It's quite a bit to the left, in fact. Flynn's ouster was a blow to the White House, struggling to find its footing in Trump's first weeks in office, but I don't think it's really struggling. Somebody else's word, not mine. The questions, however, about Russia only deepened this week when the New York Times reported that U.S. agencies had intercepted phone calls last year between Russia and members of Trump's 2016 campaign team. By the way, someone in the government committed a very serious crime. Indeed, it appears that several people did. You see, because those individuals had special access to the content of those telephone conversations between President Trump and now former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and Russia's ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak. Those discussions were secretly recorded by American intelligence agencies. The tapes are classified documents. Classified. Whoever conveyed the information contained therein to the Washington Post or any of these other papers we've discussed, quite simply committed a felony, a 10-year felony. The Post reporter David Ignatius, who published the classified material, may also be prosecuted, but he probably shouldn't be. He was merely following where the story went. It matters not that the leakers intended to reveal a deception by Flynn. The law's intent clause refers only to the intent to reveal. Any underlying motivation to serve the public good by disclosing a lie or misrepresentation is no legal consequence under the statute. Ignatius described the person who first told him of Flynn's recorded discussions with Kislyak as a senior U.S. government official. That person committed the crime stated above. But we discovered that others were also engaged in the same criminal activity. The only question now is the identities of those individuals. Prosecuting the reporter would be a step too far, in my estimation. But prosecuting those that are leaking government information, putting this nation at risk, is certainly not a step too far. And yet our Democrats seem to be focused on the wrong thing. They seem to be focused only on trying to figure out what is the relationship between the Trump administration and the nation of Russia. Let me remind you, the investigation into Michael Flynn predates Donald Trump's inauguration. It predates Donald Trump being president. This was born of Barack Obama's intelligence community. These leaks are born of Barack Obama's residual effect on the intelligence community. And something is certain to change. One Michigan Democrat supporting it, though, is Debbie Stabenow. She's supporting what's going on. She's supporting an investigation. Let's get to clip 6 real quick before we hit the break. Debbie Stabenow on the investigation. Go.
First of all, there are negotiations, there are investigations going on with the Intelligence Committee and Judiciary Committee, but I think an independent committee makes a lot of sense. This is very serious, as you've been talking about on the show. So many levels of questions. And one of the things that is deeply concerning to me is the fact that the White House knew about Michael Flynn's actions, his comments, the fact that he didn't tell the truth for about 3 weeks before they ever said anything. And frankly, they probably wouldn't have if there hadn't been good independent reporting from the press. So lots of different kinds of issues, lots of layers. I think if the president ever released his tax returns, it might be very interesting to see his own ties.
Stop. Whatever. Now we're talking about tax returns. The fact of the matter is, if somebody hadn't committed a felony, Senator, nobody would have known about this. There's your own Debbie Stabenow. I'll be proud today. Be very, very proud. Of course, we invite her on the program here from time to time. She's always too busy. Probably has a lunch appointment. 14 after on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
The Steve Gruber Show. American values with Midwestern common sense.
Welcome back to it. Here's a little something for you. You know, the Democrats spend an awful lot of time talking about fake news and Russia and all of it, as you well know. Charlie Schumer's out there, of course, talking about the cover-up, the possible cover-up of the Trump administration, and he's going to get to the bottom of it. Thanks, Chuck. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you ever looked at Twitter? If not, let me explain a little thing about Twitter. There's a little blue check mark next to people that verify that's who that person really is. Like if it's a celebrity. At real Donald Trump, that's the president, for example. Well, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Elijah Cummings of Maryland and the New York Times learned that lesson awfully hard a couple of days ago when all three were so eager to quote a Twitter account, but they fell right into the fake news cesspool. The mix-up arose after the resignation of Michael Flynn, of course, who left the White House. And then these three geniuses up there on the podium talking to the press, because that's what they like to do more than just about anything else. While I accept full responsibility for my actions, I feel it is unfair that I have been made the sole scapegoat for what happened, read a tweet, allegedly from Michael Flynn. But if a scapegoat is what's needed for this administration to continue to take this great nation forward, I am proud to do my duty. The problem is, it wasn't Michael Flynn. But during a news conference on Tuesday, Pelosi and Cummings used the tweets to support their case for a congressional hearing on the Flynn matter, using completely arbitrary, made-up fiction to support their need for an investigation. Madam Leader, just this morning, Flynn tweeted, and this is a quote, scapegoat, end of quote, scapegoat. He basically described himself as a scapegoat. Cummings went on, able to master one word in a long sentence. Pelosi of California added, I have a tweet I'm going to make. I'm telling my staff right now it's not scapegoat, it's Stonewall. And that's exactly what the Republicans in Congress are doing. Good Lord, people. I wish I was a Xanax salesman some days. I would just go to the Democratic caucus and hang out in the hallway and share some happy pills. Relax, people. The sky is not, in fact, falling. Everybody's going to be okay. Stop panicking, Nancy. You'll be all right. I promise. I mean, these people are falling for this garbage left and right. And they go out there. And does the press take them on? Absolutely not. And did you see the thing yesterday? This is beautiful. People from CNN and so forth are in a full-on panic. So the fix is in. The fix is in at these press conferences. Why? Because Donald Trump took questions from the Christian Broadcast Network, which, by the way, does pretty good work, has a huge audience. Took a question from Katie Pavlich at Town Hall and others. And by the way, did I mention we got one of those seats coming up next week? We've got one of those Skype seats in the back of the Sean Spicer daily briefings beginning at the end of next week. We were called by the, if I didn't mention this, I'm sorry, but we got called by the White House here a couple of days ago. And we were asked if we would be interested in one of those Skype seats, which basically I'll be like Max Headroom. Yeah, that dates me a little bit. I'll be like Max Headroom back there in the back of the room asking questions of Sean Spicer and maybe on occasion the president himself. So that's pretty big news for the kids here at the Steve Gruber Show. We put that together. And so in addition to the things we're doing for the BBC and NPR, well, I've got to go there and set them straight sometimes. Somebody's got to speak up and talk common sense with these folks. Don't hold it against me. We're doing everything we can to keep this thing on the rails, And then, we try to keep it on the rails, and then people like Matt call in to try to push it off the rails. All right, Matt, you're on.
What they're doing, these Democrats are tugging on our patriotism to stop Russia. It's like, be a patriot. Trump's working for the Russians, which is totally false.
Well, the problem is nobody believes it. You just hit it. Nobody's buying it. It's the Russians. First it was fake news, and then it was, it was bad. It was white supremacists and Klan members, and then it was Russia, and then it was fake news. Then it was Russia again. It's unbelievable. Go on.
Well, it's almost as though they have a small group that do believe it. They're trying to expand this thing, and it's going to fail, but if the news media is grabbing onto it too, which is a problem. I saw Wolf Blitzer yesterday talking about it. We have to stop talking about it.
Well, we can't stop talking about it. It's what we do for a living, Matt. Come on now.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I know.
No. Go back and drink your coffee. All right. Thank you very much, as always. 888-900-9966. 888-900-9966. So when this happens, it'll happen a couple of times a week that we'll be on this Skype deal. I'm going to try to focus my questions if I get called on. No, and there's no guarantee of that. I'm just glad that we're part of the White House press corps now here at the program. If I get called, I'm going to try to focus on things about the economy, about the Midwest, about states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania in the heartbeat of America here. We're going to talk about those things that affect you here, because the other reporters can beat him up on Flynn and cabinet members in Russia. We're going to go somewhere else with our questions. That'll be our focus here on the program. And again, that's going to start sometime next week. We'll confirm here in the next couple of days. 888-900-9966, the phone number to call. See some calls coming in now. You'll have to hold through the break for me. We'll get right back to you. Still ahead, we're going to hear from Karl Rove about those White House leaks, what he makes of it, and what should be done about it. I mean, they're breaking the law here. There's no question. But can they be caught? And if they're caught, then what do you do about it? 25 after, you're listening to The Steve Gruber Show.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is The Steve Gruber Show.
It's 33 after on this Thursday. Glad to have you on board. You know, the press spends a lot of time, and in fact, all of its time, trying to find something it can hang around Donald Trump or the people around him. You know, they didn't spend that kind of time with the predecessor to the office, I don't believe. Barack Obama didn't get the kind of scrutiny from this press that the current president gets, which is why he's turned to the Christian Broadcast Network, Town Hall, and others to ask questions, which is like Jim Acosta from CNN. The fix is in. The fix is in. Why, Jimmy? Because he didn't ask you a question? Relax. Comb your hair. It's out of place. My next guest, Brittney Hughes. Brittney, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
All right. Are you part of the real news? You part of that alt-right movement? I'm just trying to figure it out.
No.
Joking, of course.
We're definitely not. We're in the business of truth. I can tell you that. We're in the business of truth and facts, which seems to be missing these days. That's what we do over at the Media Research Center.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's why we've got you here. And MRC is a place that I go quite regularly because I agree with you. You guys are an honest broker of facts, and I appreciate that. And one of the things that we've learned here, I've heard a bit about, but of course it's flying under the radar because it doesn't fit the narrative of the media, and that is thousands more of illegal alien. I use this term lightly, children, because when you're 16, 17 years old, I don't know if you're a child anymore, but you're being turned loose on the streets of America, as many as 100,000 or more in the last couple of years. Tell us about it, Brittney.
Yeah, so this is something that the Media Research Center, we over at MRC-TV, have stayed on top of for some time. And like you just said, it's never going to make your nightly news. It hasn't really been talked about all that much in a couple of years, as a matter of fact. But what we found was that the Office of Refugee Resettlement, they release these numbers every single month about how many children have crossed the border recently and are then released into American communities. They're sent to sponsors in the United States. President Obama had a penchant for doing this at very, very high rates. And what we found was during his last full month in office, so in December, the Obama administration released another 7,700 illegal alien children into American communities.
And again, children. Kids. So, Brittney, I don't know what the definition of a child is, but I know that there were children that went to World War II to defend America at the age of 17, and some that snuck through at 16. But 17, you could enlist in 1941. Are those really children or are those adults?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on your definition of child, because these days a 30-year-old can be a child. If you
forgot about that.
But,
good point you make.
You're exactly right. The largest category of age group that you see of these children that come across the border are older teenagers between the ages of 15 and 17. Now, we make a very clear distinction. These are people that claim to be between the ages of 15 and 17. They don't come across with any documentation. They don't come across with any ID that proves that they are who they say they are, and they are the age that they say they are.
So you have no way to know they could be 22, 24. Who knows? If they look young, they could be 25.
Right. That's exactly right. As a matter of fact, back in 2014, when the border crisis caught the nation's attention, I went down to the border and stood there at the edge of the Rio Grande and physically watched people coming across the border. And one border agent actually told me, he said, we know We know that some of these people are not teenagers, but if they come across, they claim to be teenagers, and we can't prove otherwise, we have to process them as teenagers. So, I mean, it is true. I mean, some kids you can come by and you can tell, either, 7, 8, 9, but the vast majority of them are older teenagers, and you can't necessarily distinguish whether somebody is 17, 19.
So maybe you can help me with
21.
this. We got Brittney Hughes here from the Media Research Center. You can find them online by looking up MRC or Media Research Center. Easy to find. So here's one of the stories that I was hearing yesterday, and I couldn't even begin to tell you where, but the government saying that, just having gang affiliation is no longer reason to be deported. Some of those defending, these dreamers, if you will, because you've got this dreamer jammed up on the West Coast that's getting a bunch of attention. To me, if you're a member of, if you came here as a, child and you join a gang and you're part of MS-13 or Pick Your Poison, whatever gang it might be, to me, that's reason for you to go back from wherever it is you came from, because I don't think you're going to be a productive member of American society.
Well, and this is something that Trump is getting heavily criticized for. The people that are being rounded up right now and arrested are the criminal element of illegal aliens. That's what's happening right now, which is interesting because President Obama actually did the same exact thing, and the media didn't even talk about it back when he did it. But, of course, now President Trump has come in. He's got different immigration policies, so he's going to get a lot more scrutiny. Not only these past few years has being a gang member not been cause for deportation alone in and of itself. It's not even cause for them to turn you around at the border and say you can't come in. We know for a fact, border agents have been sounding the alarm for years now. They have been saying, we know for a fact that some of the teenagers that we are being told to process as children and allow into this country to be processed as refugees, we know they're gang members.
But that's changing now, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest, Brittney, is that not changing now? Are they not turning people back around now? We're having more arrests. The criminals, and here's what's crazy. I see all of these liberals going crazy on social media and so forth. Oh, my God, he's breaking up families. Mom was a drug dealer, all right? Dad was in a gang. I'm sorry, you don't get to stay. Being a parent doesn't trump being a felon, okay? Let's get this clear, people. I mean, is that so unreasonable?
Absolutely not. And, I mean, we're talking about common sense here. If you want to have an honest discussion
we'll have none of that.
No, absolutely not. If Americans want to have an honest discussion about what to do with, upwards of 12 million, and that's a conservative estimate, illegal aliens who are here who haven't committed crimes, then that's fine. We can do that. But when it comes to the criminal element, polls have shown that the vast majority of Americans across both political parties agree that criminal aliens need to be deported, that this catch-and-release policy should be ended, which thankfully Trump has gone after, and we're starting to see some changes there. But even Hispanic Americans, even those who are polled who are Hispanic, even agree. We don't want people here who are doing bad things. We don't want people here who are sex offenders, who prey on children, who have murdered people, who have 5 DUIs on their record.
In fact, I would suggest, Brittney, some of the strongest pushback that I have seen comes from people that came from Latin America and Central America and Mexico that came here legally. Some of the strongest pushback against illegals comes from that very group of people here that are legal residents of America.
Well, and a lot of that is because those are the communities that a lot of undocumented people live in. So you're talking about criminal aliens who pose a threat not only to American communities at large, but in particular immigrant communities, because that's where they live. So if they're going to hit somebody while drunk driving, if they're going to kill somebody, if they're going to do something bad, a lot of times the victims of those crimes are other immigrants, whether documented or not. So a lot of legal immigrants, a lot of people in those communities are saying, we don't want them here either because we're their primary targets if they do something wrong. So that just makes it's just common sense. We already have enough people that do bad things in America to begin with. Why in the world do we need to have more of them here that not only do they do bad things, but we don't know who they are, we don't know where they're from, we can't track them, we don't know where they live. This is a common sense measure that the vast majority of Americans support. I'm sorry that the media has a problem with it because it doesn't fit their agenda and their political narrative. But Americans back this by large majorities, and that's Democrats too.
I agree with that. And in fact, I think Donald Trump enforcing these measures would make him a stronger candidate today than he was in November of 2016. Brittney Hughes from the Media Research Center. You can find out more. MRC.org is the place to go. Brittney, greatly appreciate your time. Good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There you have it. Brittney Hughes from the Media Research Center. Back in a moment right here on The Steve Gruber Show.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
.45 after on this Thursday. I'm glad you're in here to join us for the conversation. My next guest, Patrice Lee Onwuka, Senior Fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. You can find it at iwf.org. Spokeswoman for Generation Opportunity. Patrice, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Glad to have you here. You know, I thought that this was a brilliant choice from the beginning. I haven't heard much about it since, but quietly in the den of Washington, back in the background somewhere, Linda McMahon, the billionaire who turned a little wrestling hobby into a multi-billion-dollar corporation, has been confirmed as the head of the Small Business Administration. And I say, anybody that can take fake wrestling and make $1 billion is my hero, and I want her in charge of creating small businesses or helping. What say you?
Well, I totally agree with you. I mean, we've seen Linda and her husband, turn a small operation, a regional operation of probably a couple of dozen employees to something that has over 800 with worldwide, name recognition. And that should be encouraging to our small businesses and to our entrepreneurs out there. I think over the past 8 years, we've seen a ton of regulations that have made it so difficult to start your business and take your dream to scale. And so I'm encouraged to see what she's able to do and how she's able to breathe new life into the backbone of our economy.
Take your dream to scale. That's going to be one of the best comments of the week, Patrice. I'm going to give you that. Because it's true. Because here's the thing about America today, and I don't know when this happened, but at some point, those on the left began demonizing success in America. I mean, they want everybody to go to college, everybody to work hard, but damn it, don't make too much money, because if you do, we're going to start calling you a one percenter, we're going to marginalize you, we're going to insult you, we're going to tell you have some sort of a privilege. I mean, if you have a net worth more than $100, somehow you must have stolen it from somebody, Patrice. And I don't know why that happened, but I like Linda McMahon because I like success.
Well, there's a philosophy, right, that says that, everything should be shared equally, equal outcomes, not equal opportunities, but equal outcomes. And while that sounds very egalitarian, it sounds, everybody's going to be better off, it's actually lowering the bar for everyone. And so when you're talking about taking taxes from the wealthy, and redistributing them in different programs, the idea is that that's supposed to lift boats. But we know that a job and that entrepreneurship and that business is really what empowers individuals to improve their lives.
Yes, we also know that a capital in the hands of private citizens as opposed to the government is much more efficient in its use. Government squanders capital, and capital, money, if you will, in this particular case, in the hands of those in the private sector is much more valuable than any tax dollar redistributed to anyone. And by the way, how did that redistribution program go in Venezuela? How'd that work out? Yeah. Venezuela, for the record, has the highest number of those seeking asylum of any nation in the world right now to America, north of 20,000 people on the list trying to get here because socialism is such a wild success. All right, so what do you think Linda McMahon can do? First of all, a woman. So Donald Trump, the misogynist Donald Trump, selects a woman, successful woman, to take over and lead this thing. What do you think she can bring to this administration?
So I think she has two key priorities, and she laid them out during her Senate hearing. One of them is on disaster relief and ensuring that, business owners and entrepreneurs who, are coming out of a devastating hurricane to their business, or landslides, even California flooding. I mean, these folks are going to need capital to be able to rebuild their businesses, if they've been damaged. So she's saying that she's making that a priority. Secondly, she wants to really see women entrepreneurs and small businesses grow. And that's really exciting. I was an entrepreneur for a while, and it can be challenging when you are, especially as a woman, if you're balancing your home life, your family, and still trying to grow your business or start a business. So I think she wants to see capital being accessible to women business owners, and that should be exciting for all business owners and all Americans. But I've got to tell you, when I saw the news, I went back and did a little bit of research, and I saw that Donald Trump used to be part of the WWE. He would get into the wrestling ring from time to time.
Get out of here! Are you serious? Whoa! Stop! Whoa! First of all, Donald Trump in spandex frightens me. That's number one.
No, not.
All right, and Donald Trump in a cape frightens me further. All right, let's just be clear about this. But you're serious.
No, I'm very serious. Definitely go on YouTube. Just Google Donald Trump in WWE. He wasn't in spandex, but he did go in there and lay the slap down or the smack down on a couple of wrestlers from time to time. So I brought that up just to say that, number one, it's funny, but number two, their relationship goes pretty far back, which is probably why he saw what the WWE was able to become and why he was willing to make that Linda McMahon would be great in this role. So we're looking forward to seeing what she's able to do. I
think I'm emotionally scarred, Patrice. I'm doing my best here to move past that. Anyhow, Patrice Lee Onwuka here from the Independent Women's Forum. I think it's great. I think it's an opportunity for her to do something with her success, to mentor, if you will, to share with other entrepreneurs, men, women, black, white, I don't care, because she was able to do what she did. I think it paves the way for a lot of folks behind her.
Yeah, I think you're right. I believe the McMahons, they probably came from a very small start. I don't know about their personal lives, but I don't think they were born with a silver spoon. But to show that you can, grow a business to the colossal size that it had become is really impressive. And we need more small businesses. We need to ensure that, young people like millennials like me, when I say, I want to become a business owner. I want to hire people. That's personally what I'm saying. I can look to people like McMahon to say, wow, what did she do? What lessons can we learn and grow from that?
All right. Well, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, Patrice, and I appreciate you. And Alex, the engineer, he said it's all true. He's seen the Donald Trump tapes. It's all true. Anyhow, Patrice, greatly appreciate it. Look forward to Linda McMahon, and hopefully that she is very successful as the head of the Small Business Administration. Patrice, thank you for stopping in.
Thank you so much, Steve.
There you have it, Patrice Lee Onwuka, Senior Fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. Find out more at IWF.org. Take a quick break here on the Steve Gruber Show.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop.
Got it.
Stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Get a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, and the chaos continues. Not here at the program. The chaos continues. We try to make sense of the chaos here at the program. But the chaos continues in Washington. Welcome to a Thursday, my friends. The chaos continues primarily, in my estimation, because of the obstacles being put in front of this administration at every step of the process, including the fact that the majority of the people Donald Trump should have been able to appoint to his cabinet and the second and third tier appointees just have not happened. Why? Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are not letting him get things through. They're obstructing him at every step, which I think is dangerous, by the way, for America. Makes us vulnerable because we're not at full capacity at the moment. And then, of course, you have General Michael Flynn resigning as the National Security Advisor. And that all traces back now to the Obama administration. The investigation into Flynn began way back during the Obama administration that was checking up on the transition. They were checking up on the transition and continued to watch and listen and record And then those folks released those recordings, those conversations, that knowledge to the Washington Post and others, which, by the way, is a felony under U.S. Code 18798, which states, by the way, as follows: whoever knowingly and willfully communicates to an unauthorized person or publishes any classified information obtained by the processes of communication intelligence from the communications of any foreign government, knowing the same to have been obtained by such processes, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. A 10-year prison sentence and a fine, it is a serious felony, but I wouldn't prosecute the reporter. The reporter was doing their job. But I would suggest that the people involved here that gave David Ignatius his story at the Washington Post might be looking over their shoulder a wee bit. I mean, this is serious, serious stuff. Of course, the Pentagon Papers, you pretty well leave Ignatius. Yeah, he's probably okay. That dates back to the early 70s. But these are very serious matters that are, and these leaks are very serious matters that should be taken a lot more seriously than whether or not, the Russians rigged the election, which is what the Democrats, they keep desperately clinging to. Well, they hacked the election. Well, they didn't hack the election. First of all, in Michigan, for example, there's no way to hack the election per se. There's no way to hack the ballots or the voting machines or any of it. They know that. You know that. And yet they keep saying it because people that live in California and New York, they have no idea. They just look at their smartphone and drool on it. Slobber on themselves. It says here it was hacked. Yeah, okay. Good job, buddy. Karl Rove, meanwhile, says these leaks are serious to the intelligence community. He was on Fox, as he is a regular contributor there, of course. Here's Karl Rove. I want you to hear what he had to say. Clip 8 on the leaks. Go.
The release of this information it will to professionals on the other side to give them clues as to our sources and methods of intelligence. And that's a great point. Look, and this is political payback, in my opinion, either by people who served in the Obama administration or by intelligence community officials who are upset about the comments that the president-elect made before he got sworn in. But that's revenge, and that has no role in our system and could be poisonous to the relationship between the president and the intelligence community. What if this is being done by some former Obama administration official and we never find out it was them, but we think it might be somebody in the intelligence community? That really poisons the relationship the president needs to have with the intelligence community.
That was on Fox last night with Karl Rove. And as you can tell, he takes it very seriously, as do I, by the way. Michigan's own Congresswoman Debbie Stabenow, though, a guest on MSNBC, not so worried about that. She just wants to investigate Donald Trump and the relationship with Russia. I'll let you listen to a bit of this until I can't take it anymore. It's clip 6. Debbie Stabenow, Michigan Senator. Go.
First of all, there are negotiations, there are investigations going on with the Intelligence Committee and Judiciary Committee, but I think an independent committee makes a lot of sense. This is very serious, as you've been talking about on the show. So many levels of questions. And one of the things that is deeply concerning to me is the fact that the White House knew about Michael Flynn's actions, his comments, the fact that he didn't tell the truth for about 3 weeks before they ever said anything. And frankly, they probably wouldn't have if there hadn't been good independent reporting.
If it hadn't been for somebody, hold on. If it hadn't been for somebody committing a felony, or somebody's committing felonies, as we just explained, we wouldn't have known about this. It's not good independent reporting necessarily, Senator. It's somebody committing a felony, a 10-year felony, by releasing that information. It's not even a close call. So there's more to the story than just Michael Flynn being run out on a rail. Michael Flynn was targeted because he wasn't liked. Now the new guy coming, Harward, the Rear Admiral, has been offered the position. I'm not sure that he's taken it yet, but we'll keep an eye on that. Very well respected. Here's the thing about this guy, by the way. He's well liked, apparently, on all sides of the aisle. Vice Admiral Robert Harward has been offered the NSA job. No word yet on whether or not he's going to come aboard. He's a former Navy SEAL, 60 years old, served as deputy commander of the U.S. Central Command under now Defense Secretary James Mattis. So they're very close. They're very good friends. He previously served as deputy commanding general for operations of Joint Special Ops at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Harward also commanded troops in both Iraq and Afghanistan for 6 years after the 9/11 attacks. Under George W. Bush, he served on the National Security Council as Director of Strategy and Policy for the Office of Combating Terrorism. So this guy is an insider, if you will. Much more of an insider than Michael Flynn was, who was not well liked by some, as you have figured out. He's not yet accepted Mr. Trump's offer, and negotiations continue over the National Security Council staff Harward would be empowered to build. According to sources, Trump told current Deputy National Security Advisor K.T. McFarland she could retain that post. Harward apparently not consulted about that decision. McFarland chosen by ousted National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. McFarland sat next to acting NSA advisor Keith Kellogg in the East Room yesterday during the press conference between Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We'll see how this plays out. But this guy is much more of an insider when it comes to Washington politics and the military apparatus. So we'll see if he gets the nod. He's been offered the job. Former Navy SEAL. And if he gets some autonomy, I think that you're going to see him in that position sometime soon. It's 14 after. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, 888-900-9966. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show.
The Steve Gruber Show. American values with Midwestern common sense.
18 after, and I want to get right to it because my next guest here to talk about Dear White People. Dear White People, a new series out there, Netflix. Dear White People. It's another victim series about the big mean white people and all the terrible things that they do. I guess I'm part of that. I'm white privilege, even though I don't think that I got anything special given to me particularly. Darryn Martin, advisory board member of the African American Leadership Network, Project 21, holds a BA from Boston University, master's from Carnegie. Dutch, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me, and I just have to say, I really feel sorry for you white guys, because you guys get blamed for everything.
Yeah, anything that goes wrong is our fault. Now, when we're successful, though, and something good happens, then it's just white privilege, and when we do something that doesn't work out so well, we're just the devil. So that's what we got going for us, Dutch.
Yeah, and you know what? When blacks and white liberals buy into that, it only makes African Americans and other minorities, especially those who actually have succeeded through hard work, it makes us look bad. It makes us look weak. It makes our accomplishments suspect.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit more here in a second, but tell me about this Dear White People series. What is this?
Well, according to the trailer, it's set at a fictitious Ivy League school, and a group of black students are upset that this white fraternity had a party, a costume party, where some of the members of this white fraternity were dressing in blackface. And so the black students, of course, took offense to it and decided to stage their own, I guess, response by pretty much putting not just those white college frat boys, but to put, white America in general on blast. Now, the premise of this is flawed in a number of ways. Number one, as what happened at, I believe it was Oklahoma University a couple of years ago, any white college fraternity that would even consider something that's blatantly racist or is blatantly politically incorrect to that would be shut down by the college administration immediately. It wouldn't be tolerated. And secondly, these are black students at an Ivy League school. So the fact that they're at an Ivy League school should let you know, okay, these students, they were pretty, they pretty much had what it took academically to get accepted to this, fictitious Ivy League school.
Right.
So that's the plus, But again, you have to, white liberal Hollywood has to lay the cloak of victimhood over the whole thing. And
why this industry, Dutch? And let me just jump in there. And to hell with this garbage program that'll never survive because it'll never get ratings. But let me ask you this. How is it that this industry of victimhood continues to churn along? You know, and I hear, you hear more things about reparations and, you hear people on the streets. I hear these protesters, white people, give us your money, we demand your money, and all these other things that are going on. And social justice apparently comes with throwing bricks through the windows of fast food restaurants or burning down the local pharmacy. What is with this whole idea of victimhood? Why does it keep getting perpetuated? Why do people not say enough already?
Because it generates two things, publicity and money. Okay, Booker T. Washington had an excellent quote over 100 years ago, and I'm paraphrasing. He says, there's another class of colored people who basically make money out of putting, the wrongs, the problems, and the bad experiences of other colored people front and center, not because they want to fix these problems, but because they want to make money off of it. And so the modern-day black civil rights establishment, embodied by people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, exemplified this new age black victimhood Inc. Okay? And now, white liberals realize that they can make a penny off of it. White Hollywood is trying to make a buck off of it. I mean, they're doing it not because they actually care about, what's going on with the fact that 70% of black children are born out of wedlock, and that, the epidemic of fatherlessness and black women who are...
The problem is you just hit something there that's really important. Not enough fathers in America, black or white for that matter. I want to go back up to Booker T. Washington, though. Booker T. Washington, a national story. There was a big controversy in America because he was invited by the President of the United States to come to the White House, which he did on more than one occasion, because Teddy Roosevelt thought that was the right thing to do and thought he was a great man, which he was. He was also a Republican, but they don't want that in the history books either, do they?
Of course not. And what they also don't want in the history books is the fact that the Republican Party has done more to advance and promote civil rights for African Americans and voting rights for African Americans than the Democratic Party has. I mean, and this is just not an opinion. This is fact. I mean, every piece of civil rights legislation that has been on the books from the 1800s until the 1960s was put out there by the Republican Party, and it was the Democratic Party that always voted it down. Okay, these are facts. But again, the modern-day Democrat, and the modern-day left, they try to rewrite history and try to portray the Republican Party as this group of racists who, want to, take us back to the days of slavery. Well, if we went back to the days of slavery, guess what? It would be the Democratic Party who would benefit from it.
Well, and some would say that the welfare system as it is, perpetual welfare system, is an extension of that problem, if you will.
It most certainly is. You see, the reason why so many African Americans sat on their hands and did nothing after the Civil Rights Movement was because the expansion of welfare gave them very little reason to do otherwise. Okay? The expanded welfare state represents a federal bureaucracy that basically paid disproportionately African American women to have children out of wedlock, to kick the father out of the home, and to spend their lives on the dole and married to Uncle Sam. Okay, that is the bare bones reality of the modern day welfare state. Of course, when you mention this in polite company, liberals go.
Yeah, you don't mention it in polite company. Well, liberals generally, if they're to that extreme, they're not polite company anyway, Dutch. We got to leave it there for today. Greatly appreciate you coming through and look forward to talking to you again soon because I love the conversation.
Thank you very much.
There you go, Dutch Martin from Project 21 here on the Steve Gruber Show. Back after this.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
All right, well, I am a little bit unusual. You may have figured that out. I've had the great opportunity to test out the emergency room facilities in 3 countries so far. America's ERs seem to be the best, but I've checked them out. I wanted to compare and contrast for you, so I wanted to make sure you understood that I was qualified to have this conversation with Dr. Larry Schlachter, board-certified neurosurgeon, on call at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta. And he says our healthcare system puts a lot of patients at risk. Dr. Schlachter, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
All right. So tell me where we're at risk and some of the things we should be focused on if we have to go to the ER.
Well, let me also tell you at the beginning of all this conversation that not only am I a physician, a neurosurgeon, but I'm an attorney.
Well, you've got both. Well, don't sue yourself. You've got both sides covered.
I would have a fool for a client, right?
Yeah. Well, some would say I don't know, Larry. I mean, some would say I wouldn't say that. I don't know you that well yet. Give me some time.
Okay. And in terms of Emory, I did my residency there for 7 years, which was some time back. But I've not been on staff at Emory since then. I was out in private practice. So what would you like me to tell you about the emergency rooms?
Well, the thing is, a couple of times I've gone to the ER and I've come back and me personally, and I won't name any specific facilities, but one in this country and one in New Zealand where I ended up contracting an infection into an injury that I had that I believe had to have come directly from where I was being treated because apparently I wasn't protected properly. Is that a common thing?
No, I don't think most people get infections in the emergency room, although if you have an open wound and you're in a hospital, you're in an environment where there's all sorts of infectious material floating around, and actually people contract all sorts of terrible infections in hospitals. Well,
an estimated, what is it, a quarter million Americans die as a result of medical mistakes each year, and so you go into an ER, you have somebody, maybe they're a resident, they've been there a long time, and mistakes can happen, I guess. That's what I should be concerned about. This is something that you've written about for sure.
Sure. So let's talk about that. So earlier last year, a study came out of Johns Hopkins, published in the British Medical Journal, that the third leading cause of death in the United States is medical errors, medical mistakes. Now, this is just behind heart disease and cancer. Now, this should floor most people because it's the equivalent of 2 747s crashing every day in America. Now, imagine if one 747 crashed instead of 700, you'd have the NTSB all over this. But who is doing the same thing for medical accidents? Who's looking into them to hold the system or individuals accountable so that the same accidents don't happen over and over again?
Well, certainly you have malpractice insurance, and you would know, obviously, you're an attorney and a doctor. You have apparently had a lot of time to go to school, but malpractice insurance, wouldn't that be enough to protect us, or there should be something else is what you're suggesting?
Oh, no, the money aspect of this has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually taking care of the patients and preventing the accidents. The financial compensation part of it is a whole other discussion.
Well, let's talk about, give me a couple of examples of the kind of mistakes that you think are all too common when it comes to having this happen.
Okay, so let me talk for 1 second about my book, Malpractice, which just came out. And in this book, I tell all sorts of stories, but it's basically for patients to advocate for their own safety. The book came out last month. It's available on Amazon.com and available in Barnes & Nobles. And it took me about 4 years to put this together. Some of the examples in the book are rather shocking. An example is, let's say a lady woke up in a Midwestern state with a severe headache, and she had a seizure and fell to the floor in convulsions. 911 was called and took her to the local emergency room, where they said, oh, she's an alcoholic, we know that. And they didn't do a CT scan of her head. And they didn't do the most important thing, which was a blood alcohol test to confirm their thoughts. Well, she went home, and she had another seizure and another brain hemorrhage. And when they brought her back, they did a CT scan, and she had a ruptured aneurysm, and she went off for an emergency operation, but she was neurologically devastated. So they had a prejudice that this woman was an alcoholic, but they never checked to look, and they missed the diagnosis because of that. Now,
Who should be accountable for that? I mean, that's common sense. If the policeman thinks that you're driving drunk, they do a blood alcohol level or breathalyzer, but not in an emergency room.
Well, I don't disagree with you, doctor, but you did say she was an alcoholic, correct?
Well, they thought she was, but even if she was, you would still have to confirm that she actually had alcohol in her system to make the diagnosis of alcohol causing seizures.
Well, fair point, but I guess my point would be is, if somebody is an alcoholic, they're putting their own medical system at risk. But I get your point that people should confirm what their theory is, right?
Well, absolutely, and to then turn around and blame the patient for not taking care of their drug addiction or their blood pressure or the fact that they have a chronic disease, that's a whole other discussion. The point is that the medical system and the providers have to do the right thing for each and every patient on a fair and equitable basis. That's all I'm asking for, and that's what needs to be done.
So let me ask you about something. You know Tom Price quite well, the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, known him for about 40 years, I understand.
That's correct.
And you wrote an op-ed for The Hill not too long ago, and you want to make sure that he is hearing this message of put the patients first, regardless of what their background may be. Maybe they're a drug addict, maybe they're an alcoholic, but still put the patient first if they're in your care for that period of time. Try to put their best interests forward, whatever those may be, and you want Tom Price to take the same attitude. Is that correct?
Well, let me back up here, because this discussion is going somewhat down the wrong road of talking about alcoholics and drug addicts. Let's just talk about people who are not addicted to anything, who come in with sickness and illness and need to be attended to. I'm talking about safe care for all people. Now, Dr. Price knows this very well, and as a physician, he practiced it very well. He's very good at this. You know, he and I come through the same training program. What I'm saying to him is, in a political sense, it's more important for us to have patient safety reform, better accountability within our hospitals, and not to focus so much on tort reform and limiting economic awards to the victims who deserve to be compensated. Then in The Hill, in the editorial that I wrote, I pointed out that the good parts of Obamacare need to be retained, not eliminated. And those include portability of insurance, where an employee can take insurance from one job to another and not lose their coverage. That pre-existing conditions should be covered, and not through high-risk pools with high deductibles where people can't afford it.
Let me ask you this, Doctor, before we run out of time. Where can somebody find your book?
They can find the book on Amazon.com or www.larryschlachter.com.
And the name of the book one more time before we run?
Malpractice.
Malpractice. We can remember that. Doctor, thank you so much for stopping in.
Thank you.
It is 41 after on the Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
It always makes me feel better when I look at the list on Thursday and say, I've seen one of those movies, thankfully. Makes me feel like I've done my homework, at least in part. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, the man, the myth, and the legend, Ron Van Timmeren from Celebration Cinemas. Ron, welcome back.
Steve, good to be with you, buddy. What'd you see? What'd you see?
I saw, I should have had a clicker in my hand to see how many people are actually killed in the movie.
You couldn't keep up.
You could not keep up. So which movie did I see?
John Wick Chapter 2.
Bingo! We have a winner, Johnny. What did he win? Show him behind door number 3. Dude, it was, I didn't see Chapter 1, so I didn't know what I was in for. And it was creative, and it was interesting. And I'm like, wow, they've come a long way with special effects.
Well, yeah, and although Keanu Reeves did all his own stunts, you got to give him credit for that. Even though acting is not his strong suit, he can do action pictures pretty well, and he fit the role, right?
Yeah, he's not much of an actor, but it wasn't bad. I give it a thumbs up. I wouldn't go screaming back for Chapter 3, but it was a diversion. You saw a lot of crazy things going on, and I'm thinking that must hurt. Yeah, and he does all his own stunts, so that did hurt.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and you're not alone. I mean, it came in third place this weekend, but overachieved to the tune of $30 million, and critics loved it too, and audiences. Everybody I've talked to said, you got to be ready for the ultra violence, but it was fun.
I think it might have been the most. As far as body count goes, I don't know if there's a record for such things. It might have been number one all time.
It's definitely up there. And what's with all these bad guys and their bad aim? I've always marveled at that in Hollywood movies where he can take out dozens and no one can. Did he actually get shot ever in the whole thing?
Oh, yeah, a couple times. Yeah, he had that funny, he had the fancy state-of-the-art bulletproof stuff on.
Oh, good for him.
From the suit maker. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's actually, I say third place, and Lego Batman hit. I saw that and loved that. It was big fun. I mean, I got to go back again. There's so much going on in the Lego Batman movie, and you miss half the jokes because you're laughing at the first two when the third one hits. And so that's good for adults and kids. 50 Shades Darker, actually, including Valentine's Day Tuesday, that outgrossed Lego movie domestically. And so all three of these films...
It grossed out who? It grossed out who?
It outgrossed. Excuse me.
I'm sorry. I got turned around there. I got a little confused.
It grossed out and it outgrows. How about that?
Yeah,
right?
There you go, Rob. But it big hit like we expected.
Right. We'll see what happens this week, even though the competition's not real great. A couple of weeks down here before we get Logan, that next X-Men movie, and the new King Kong movie coming in March. But this week, Matt Damon's going to try to do a movie called The Great Wall, which is, the China, Great Wall in China.
Sure.
And he's going to protect the world from some paranormal creatures trying to invade China. I don't know. This has already been a $100 million hit in China, and I'm not so sure American audiences are going to get it, but that opens this weekend.
Well, if they've already made $100 million, does it really matter? I mean, no, not really. There's one movie, though, that I keep seeing a lot of promotion for that actually I've seen the trailers for because I was at the movies, like I said, and that's this Cure for Wellness that seems interesting to me.
It does. Oh, it looks so creepy, though.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah.
I might have to go by myself. Ivy's not into creepy movies. I might have to go sit that and watch that one by myself, but it's got me intrigued because it looks different.
Yeah, it is different. And Gore Verbinski, the director, has made a bunch of these Pirates of the Caribbean movies. He's worked with snakes before, so if you don't mind snakes in your bathtub, that scene always gets me. I don't know what the heck. It's set in Switzerland at this, mental clinic, and you can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave kind of place, right?
Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah.
And then an R-rated screwball comedy called Fist Fight Ice Cube. Charlie Day playing a couple of teachers who have a little dust-up over one of them getting fired or turning the other one in, and so let's take it out to the playground. Kind of a one-joke movie, but it looks like it could be fun.
Yeah, there you go. And then you've got this other thing. I saw this when I was pawing through when I was trying to figure out which movie to go see here a couple of days ago. And I saw Reservoir Dogs was playing at 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, dude, that is like awesome. But I'm like, I can't be up at 11 o'clock. Look at how old I am. I'm lucky to be alive, for God's sake, Ron. You should play it at noon for guys like me.
Well, it was part of our Founders film series last week, and then we held it over for Last Call Cinema because it's Tarantino month, and we're doing that with Kill Bill Volume 1 this week. So, yeah, you know what? That's the thing. We're doing that with Newsies. We only can get a couple of shows in this weekend. We got too many movies and not enough time, Steve.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, and a lot of good stuff out there. Anything we've missed before we run for the day?
Well, listen, Oscar nominations are out, of course, and the award show is next week Sunday, so you got to see a couple of Best Picture nominations in La La Land, Hidden Figures, and Lion. 1, 2, and 3. Go see those.
It's beautiful, and if you don't like standing in line, go straight to the internet and buy your tickets there, correct?
Attaboy, you bet. Reserve your seats online, especially if you want one of those recliner seats, perfect position. Do that at celebrationcinema.com.
Who the hell ever said I wasn't trainable, Ron? Come on.
You are on fire.
There you go. There he is, everybody. Where will we find you?
See you at the movie, Steve.
There it is, Ron Van Timmeren, everybody. See you later. Out the door he goes. In comes our good friend Jenny from Brownstown, checking in from downriver on the hotline. Jenny, good morning.
Morning, Steve. How you been?
I am well. What's on your mind?
I have two questions, and I'll hang up. You can answer them.
Okay.
Number one, wouldn't this be a matter for the Justice Department to start figuring out about these leaks that are, bothering Trump? And also, is Michael Flynn, why did Trump let him go?
Well,
I don't understand why he let him go. So those
I'll
are my
answer your questions in order. Is the best I understand. Michael Flynn, from what they have said, was not fully forthcoming with Vice President Mike Pence when asked about his conversation with the Russians. Now, do we know what the extent of those are? No. Should the DOJ be investigating? Somebody should be investigating these leaks? Absolutely. Absolutely, because that is a felony, a 10-year felony, because if you've got your intel community leaking and not giving full information to certain people, that would be a crime, my dear. It's the Steve Gruber Show on a Thursday.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, it is Thursday. Glad to have you along for the conversation if you'd like to join it. The phone number is 888-900-9966. 888-900-9966. It's Thursday, which means Congressman Tim Walberg is here. And Congressman, welcome back to the program, first of all.
Good to be back with you.
Obviously, it's always good to live in interesting times, and interesting times they are. Let's start with this upheaval in Washington and your take on it with Michael Flynn leaving as the National Security Advisor, the roots thereof, and what you make of it from your point of view.
Well, it remains to be seen what was done, what conversations were had, whether there were any violations that General Flynn committed. The question, though, here that brought the demise of him serving this president was the fact that he didn't lay it out clearly, honestly, for the president and the vice president. And when you can't do that, then there's a trust factor, and that appears to be the reason why he was let go. The Russian issue is something that we certainly ought to take into consideration. We know that the Russians attempted to mess around with our election process. It's already been proven by FBI and others who have looked into it that they had no impact upon the outcome of the election. But it certainly is concerning when outside forces are involved.
Yeah, they certainly, the Russians have always fooled around with our elections, Congressman, that's for sure. But I guess the other part of this equation is David Ignatius from the Washington Post, who got this story originally, got this from people leaking inside the intelligence community. Now, that's a felony. It's a 10-year felony at a minimum, potentially, for some of these folks. And sounds like there could be several people that are holdovers from the Obama administration, because if you look at the timeline, it's very obvious that General Flynn was under investigation by the previous administration, the previous intelligence community put together by Barack Obama. That's when the investigation, if you will, began. And then these leaked conversations between Flynn and his Russian counterpart, that is a felony. You can't have leaks inside the intelligence community like that. That is very concerning to me.
See, and that's the bigger question, I believe. Intelligence community is to do what it's supposed to do, and it's supposed to do it in such a way that it is not political in nature, and it doesn't appear to be political in nature. And so they go with the facts as the facts develop and follow the process. But very clearly, as you have stated, they're not to be leaked, and this was leaked to the press. And my major concern right now, and I know Devin Nunes, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, heard him last night, in fact, say that that's their push right now, as they do the investigation and all of what's surrounding it. First and foremost is to make sure that the law is carried out with those people that American people trust to not abuse their power and to leak things that, in fact, if they're not treasonous, they could be very detrimental to the health and security of this country.
Well, it makes you wonder if they're treasonous, because the other story that's coming out of the last 24 hours is that the intelligence community isn't being forthcoming with its information to the President of the United States, that they're holding back some information, totally unprecedented from what I can tell, if it's true. But again, it's just a story surfacing now. So you've got potentially some people inside the intelligence community leaking information to the press because they have their own personal political agenda, which they feel is more important than the American security that they might be threatening. And you've got these others also playing different kinds of games by not giving the president all of the information that he is, well, entitled to as the president of the United States.
Well, let's just say it here that we can expect for this entire term, but especially as we begin these first 100, 200 days, that those people that are still whining about election and can't accept the will of the people are going to be trying to undermine in any way possible what's going on. And we want to make sure that our national resources within the administration, and especially in the intelligence and home security community, regardless of their political persuasion, still carry out the law and live by the rules and help the administration accomplish what the people expect this administration to do.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that.
I think in every department, this is the problem that this president is going to have. There are people who have been embedded in departments from education to FBI to Homeland Security to agriculture to interior, you name it, who are going to try to undermine this administration. And for that reason, this administration is going to have to be resolute to make sure that they get after this and they put people in place who will ferret out the illegal actions and the controverted actions that will come from people who just do not accept the will of the people.
Now, looking at the man put forward now, there's a man whose name has been put forward as the National Security Advisor, Vice Admiral retired Robert Harward. Looks like he's a close friend of Mad Dog Mattis, the Secretary of Defense. He's well acquainted with the Washington apparatus. He's been around there for a while. He gets it. He's been a commander. He's a Navy SEAL. A lot of Navy SEALs in this administration as you look around, which I have totally good with. What do you think about him being one of the possibly the next National Security Advisor?
Well, I know very little about him other than the fact he has a great record, that he is a leader, Navy SEAL. When you're a commander level of a Navy SEAL, you're talking about not only a tough person that can endure extreme situations, but is also resolute in carrying out the agenda that's put before him. And the agenda that's put before him is making sure that the national security of this country is just that. It is secure. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. But when you're going at it in the way this administration does, looking at good people who will stand for America, that's helpful to us, and it's encouraging. Just have to make sure that they understand. Got to be forthcoming, and the commander-in-chief needs to know the brutal truth if necessary, so decisions are made properly.
Well, no question. And the information, I mean, the fact of the matter is we need to get to the bottom of this. I don't think we need to go after the reporter necessarily. He was relating what was given to him, and I think if you go all the way back to the Pentagon Papers of the early 1970s, the chance of going after the reporter is pretty nil anyway. Something else about the press, though, that I found interesting, and they're throwing a complete fit over. Donald Trump calling on the Christian Broadcast News Network is one of his questions yesterday. And on townhall.com, he wasn't calling on the people that think that they're owed a question, that being the big news networks and the cable news networks. He was ignoring them and taking questions from other people. How interesting, huh?
That's his choice. And, in fact, it may be good that good segments of the mainline media understand that there's a new sheriff in town, and you're going to follow the rules in delivering the news as it is to the people, as opposed to be an organ of the left-wing party.
Yeah, instead of just being the news you want it to be. All right, Congressman Tim Walberg with us. We're going to take a quick break here, Congressman. We'll be back in a moment. A couple of phone calls. Might get a question in for the Congressman as well. Make sure you're safe in your home. Get it tested for radon. Radon at Michigan.gov, the place to go to get your testing kit, or 800-RADON-GAS. Number 2 cause of lung cancer. Be safe. Be careful. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
All right, it is 18 after. Get a quick question. Bill calling from Jenison. What's on your mind, Bill?
Well, it's not surprising that Trump isn't getting any help from Washington, quite honestly. Hillary won the D.C., got the 3 votes from D.C. by 260,000 to 11,000. That kind of explains.
Yeah.
And I'm not making those numbers up.
I know.
You can check that. And we never hear about that. I haven't heard it on the regular news that's what's going on. But all the bureaucrats obviously must be Democrats.
Well, Bill, I greatly appreciate the call. There's a lot of truth to that. Congressman Tim Walberg with us still. And Congressman, obviously, when you've got when the Democrats win D.C. by better than 90%, I think Bill's point is that, of course, the bureaucrats are Democrats. Look at the way they vote. There's some truth to that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're living in a small dot print, I guess you'd say, microcosm in itself, to itself, of itself, here in Washington. And I have to regularly remind my staff that live here in this area about what it actually is back in the hinterlands of this country where real people live. And of course, great staff, they understand it, they get it, but they live amongst this every day, and all of a sudden, it becomes reality. It isn't. Thank God, America is much different than what happens right around here in D.C.
Yeah, no question. It's a different place. Okay, so your colleague Bill Huizenga had a bill signed that he had put forth, signed by the president here a day or two ago, to start rolling back Dodd-Frank. So despite everything that's going on, and despite all of the noise and nonsense, Benjamin Netanyahu is here, has a great meeting with the president. Shinzo Abe is here from Japan, has a great meeting with the president. Bill Huizenga's bill gets signed into law that starts to roll back Dodd-Frank and some of the other regulations that have slowed down American industry and business. So progress is still being made, yes?
Oh, absolutely, and that's what I wanted to say to you. Regardless of what you're reading in the media, there are things happening here. We're moving forward with the repeal of Obamacare, and I want to make it very clear, we're working side by side with the president, and he's working side by side with us on that, including the tax reform. And of course, you're going to hear differences of opinions, even coming from Republicans, as we negotiate in committees, doing something that the Democrats didn't do with Obamacare under the cover of darkness, 2,700 pages that most of them didn't read, they passed so that they could get an opportunity to find out what's in it. That's ridiculous. What we're doing here is open in front of the people. We passed, I believe it's now 13 CRAs, Congressional Review Act, the reforms, taking rules that this president put through under the cover of darkness, midnight before he went out of office, including a bill that I passed yesterday here in the House, overwhelmingly goes to the Senate. Soon the president will sign it as well, that takes back control from what Obama gave to states to take over retirement systems without ERISA controls underneath it. I mean, can you imagine Illinois, California, some of those liberal states taking retirement dollars and investing them and losing along with some of them up in the billions of dollars they're underwater now with their pension funds? And so these are things that are happening. Sadly, the media isn't talking about it, but things are getting
the media doesn't talk about anything except the media these days. The media is complaining that they didn't get questions, you know. There I am watching the CNN reporter have a fit. The fix is in because we didn't get to ask a question. Really? Jim Acosta, you didn't get to ask a question, so the fix is in what? What are you entitled? Do you have a gold star on your chest or something? I mean, these people are out of control.
Well, absolutely, but I think we need to stay in control. Eyes narrowed, chin down, nose forward, and moving to take back this country. And it's happening. It won't come without a lot of heat. It won't come without a lot of questioning that goes on. But in the end, America is going to be better because of it, because America will be returned to the people that make America great. So it is an exciting time. I sit on Energy and Commerce Committee. We're heavily wrapped up with working through the repeal and replacement of Obamacare, doing it in a very reasonable, orderly fashion, working with now a Secretary of Health and Human Services, Tom Price, who has 1,400 pages of opportunities for him, as it says in the Obamacare law itself, the Secretary of Health and Human Services may or shall, he can, with a stroke of the pen, repeal much of what we need to do. Our reconciliation bill is working, and we hope to have that completed and to the President for signature by the end of March. Then all that remains after Tom Price gets done what he can do with what our reconciliation bill, then will come to legislative efforts to put the final conclusions on. And let me make it very clear to your listeners, we have never said anything but the fact that we would do this in an orderly, transition fashion, making sure that people weren't thrown up but still had health care opportunities such as they are under the Affordable Care Act. That is our process, and anyone that's saying anything different is lying to the people.
I find that hard to believe that anybody would lie to the people, Congressman. I mean, that's how can you say such a thing?
It's a battle for the heart and soul of this nation, and I'm glad that we're in it.
Well, as I look at what's going on in Washington and the revolt of the media, the revolt of Charlie Schumer and others, because it's not just the president's cabinet that's been held up. It's hundreds or thousands of lower-level appointments that have not been made as well. Because of the stall tactics of the Democrats. I mean, there are literally thousands of positions that should have been filled by now that have not been filled. So you've got all of these Obama holdovers that are, still there creating, I think, some of this chaos. I'll give you 30 seconds for the last word.
Well, and that's what it's going to be. We've had 8 years of chaos, of crisis after crisis after crisis. Saul Alinsky trained our former president well. But the same people that supported him are still there, and they're going to cause these crises to happen. I just tell the American people, don't let it attack your psyche. Realize we're still in the greatest nation on this earth. We still have a government, though it's a terrible form of government. It's the best form in the entire world, and we're going to get it done.
And there you go. Congressman Tim Walberg, always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. Thank you for stopping in.
Have a great rest of the week.
There you have it. He's a better man than I am. I wouldn't have the patience for the nonsense and the process. The process would drive me bananas. Because I would just stand up and say something that I probably meant, and then I'd be, censured and sent home. And, well, It's the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
Someday they won't let you. Now you must agree. The times they are a-telling and the changing isn't free. You've read it in the TV.
All right, it's Thursday. You've just about put this one in the books. You've done well so far, but there's still work to be done this week. So I don't want you checking out of class early because what you learn later in class is just as important as what you learn early. My next guest, Genevieve Wood, leading voice for the Heritage Foundation, senior fellow in communications and contributor to the Daily Signal. Genevieve, welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Steve.
So some confusion out there. I've had some different voices on this over the last couple of weeks. I don't know that there is a consensus on how to handle Obamacare. I know that the people that voted for Donald Trump are very insistent on a couple of things. One is rolling back taxes and getting some reform there, and Obamacare. People want to know what's going to happen next. Now, there's been some, softening, I suppose, maybe not on the president's part, but on the part of some Republicans. What do you see happening?
Well, you see people delaying fulfilling the very promises they made on the campaign trail. And you're right, there were a number of promises made. I would say first and foremost was the repeal of Obamacare, because keep in mind, this was not just something they promised voters in 2016. Republicans in Congress have been, this was one of the ways the Tea Party got started. They've been talking about this 2010, 2012, 2014, and every year saying, if we just had all the levers in government, we could do this thing. They now have all those levers. But as you point out, there's also tax reform promises. There was also the border security promises. And the problem, Steve, is that you can't do some of those other things until you repeal Obamacare, because it's going to have to be done through what's called the reconciliation process. That's got to happen before you get into tax reform and these other measures.
Actually, Dr. Tom Price can do a lot of it himself because of the way the law is written. He has a tremendous amount of sway over how the levers of Obamacare are applied. Dr. Tom Price, of course, the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He has a lot of control there. But here's a kind of the backdrop to this problem is all the chaos in Washington. And you can point to Michael Flynn and this and that, but really, I point to the obstruction coming from the Democrats, who won't even allow this president to get his cabinet in place, which means thousands of lower appointments, about 5,000 in all, haven't happened either because of the obstructionist behavior of Chuck Schumer and others, slowing down the entire process, which means the first 100 days they're not able to accomplish all of the things that they'd really like to. At least that's what I'm seeing.
Well, there is definitely that as a part of this, but keep in mind, that doesn't affect the House of Representatives at all. All these Senate confirmations are happening in the Senate. So all the obstruction by Chuck Schumer and company are having, yes, Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters, they're holding press conferences, but they have nothing to do with the Senate confirmations and the like. So there's no reason the House could not be voting on repeal for Obamacare. I just don't think we can let them off the hook on that. Now, not to say that the Democrats aren't obstructing and doing other things and delaying Tom Price from getting in there, and you're right, there's certainly things he can do on the regulatory side in particular, but in terms of getting rid of the individual mandate, the tax subsidies, the employer mandates, that has got to go through Congress, the Medicaid expansion. That stuff has to go through Congress, and it has to be Congress who enacts any sort of replacement legislation after. So again, they have their ability to be busy on this. Let the Senate finish dealing with this other stuff, and then when that's done, the House bill would be right there waiting for them.
And then they'd be ready to roll. But
they would. And keep in mind, Steve, they passed this reconciliation bill back in 2015, the House and Senate. The legislation's already written. All these folks have already voted on it once. All they have to do is bring it back up and vote on it again. And they're dragging their feet for whatever reason because they think replacing is going to be hard. Well, we didn't send them to Washington to do easy jobs. And number two, I don't recall them talking about how hard it was going to be when they were running for Congress. They acted like they'd be able to do this thing. And number three, you repeal it, there's going to be a measure of time in there which gives insurance companies stability in the market to keep those who already have the coverage from losing anything, but transition to whatever's going to come next. The longer they delay this, frankly, the more instability they put in the market.
Well, yeah, because markets want to know what's going on. But, having said that, good Lord, since Election Day, the Dow is up 2,200 points.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody is buying what Donald Trump is doing. There's not a lot of confusion in that market now, is there?
No, there's not. But I think that's because they're banking on, he's talked about tax reform. He doesn't seem to be confused about repealing Obamacare. He keeps saying this should be happening immediately, or has called for that. They think, what he's doing on the regulatory front, deregulations with the pipelines and the whole bit. So, business environment loves that. But I guarantee you, the longer they delay Obamacare means the longer that tax reform will be delayed. And eventually the business community and the markets will catch on to that and be like, you know what? We bet on folks that aren't fulfilling their deal. And then you have the 2018 elections that will be coming. So, I hate to talk about that already, but that kind of stuff starts piling up very quickly. The timeline gets very short to accomplish
I can tell you
half
this.
of what they've talked about.
Here's the thing. If the Democrats like Charlie Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, who, out there talking about fake Twitter accounts and so forth, if these clowns continue with what they're doing, it doesn't take the American people long to figure this out. And I'm going to tell you, living here in Michigan and traveling in the Midwest extensively and knowing what's going on and talking to people, a lot of which who voted for Donald Trump never said a thing to their friends, won't say a thing to their friends, told me, of course, well, yeah, I'm voting for Trump, but I won't say it to anybody else. They know what we talk about here on the program. They're okay telling me. I think that populace has gotten larger because I think the American people are for a secure border. I think American people are for a healthcare system, if there is to be one that the government is involved with, that works properly and equally and fairly for all and not just for some and burdening some more than others. I think that's what America is for. And despite the chaos that the national news media tries to tell you is going on, I think that the American consumer of media is more savvy than that. I think the voter is more savvy than that.
I think you're absolutely right. Look, that's one reason Donald Trump won, because remember, they tried to paint this as a circus. He doesn't have the credibility. He doesn't know what he's doing long before he became president. That was part of the whole election season. And voters clearly decided, no, what we have right now is chaos and a circus in Washington, and we've had it for years, and we're going to actually elect somebody that we think can fix it. And I think you're right. I think people are tuned out in many respects to the back and forth that goes up here every day. I think these town halls and these protests you see around the country, many people are put off by and think that's outrageous. But having said that, you on the other side, being Republicans, have to be able to fulfill what you said as well. And, where you can point and say those guys kept us from doing it, fine. But I don't think we can let Republicans in Congress off the hook.
No, I don't want
to
I don't want to let them off the hook. I want to hold them accountable, but they've got to get through some of this nonsense. Like it's Russia. It's Russia. Russia didn't let us do Obamacare. That'll be the next thing.
That'll work.
But let's be honest. I mean, Pete Williams of NBC and all the other reporters, the ones that are still credible out there, and there are a few. No collusion between Trump and the Russians, but yet that's the headline today. And Michael Flynn, and we need to know what the president knew. Shut up, Nancy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're right.
I slipped.
You're absolutely right.
If Nancy Pelosi was here, I did anyhow. I'm just going to let that be. Genevieve, I'll get you the last word, though, for 20 seconds.
Well, all I would say is, what has to remain is that voters and the people in Michigan and all over this country have to stay engaged. And this next week, members of Congress are at home. Many of them will be having town halls. And I would encourage supporters of the president and of Republican members of Congress, if they're having town halls, go to them, because the left is showing up at all these trying to disrupt them, and they need to know that your voice is just as loud. And frankly, there's more of us than there are of them.
Genevieve Wood from the Heritage Foundation, always a good conversation. I always enjoy having you here. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, sir.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
Every day I get the
All right, Thursday, 45 after. You listen to the Steve Gruber Show. And, the problems at Michigan State University and the athletic department seem to be piling up. Obviously, the Dr. Nassar story spreading, getting worse, more people involved. But that just seems to be the starting point for it. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about it because of all the chaos going on in D.C., but I decided it was time to get caught up with Tim Stout, who's been following this. In fact, I noticed, Tim, that you're more of a news person now than you are a sports person lately. I mean, you're doing more of this at the top of the show when you're doing stuff than sports-related stuff. It's a mess.
I spend more time at the top of the news than the bottom of the news anymore. I guess no one wants to hear and see spring training.
Well, I guess that's true.
It's going on, but it's a real secret.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Where do you start? I mean, it's a mess. With Nassar and the other suspensions and problems. Catch me up. If I was just walking in off a cruise, where would you start?
Well, I mean, it's a two-pronged issue, a litany of issues at Michigan State right now. The football program's got issues, and I see where the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office has received evidence and is going to determine what it's going to do with at least 3 players and 1 staffer, and that doesn't sound good. With some alleged sexual assault allegations involved there. Already the staffer has been identified and suspended along with the 3 players. The Nassar story to me looks like it has absolutely no end in sight. I do think there are parallels to Penn State among other schools, and it's a tough story, and it doesn't. As I say, this doesn't look like it's going to be a quick fix either.
No, I've talked to people that have been close to Nassar. I've been around here these parts long enough. People that knew the man well, that were close to him, had no idea. Totally shocked. I mean, soft-spoken, nice guy. And some of the parents were in the rooms when some of these events occurred, if you will, who thought, no big deal. He's doing what he's supposed to do. And so, I mean, I don't know. Is it, I don't know. What do you make of it?
Well, I make of it similarities to Penn State in that Jerry Sandusky was always thought to be a really good assistant football coach. We've interviewed Larry Nassar 4 or 5 times because he's had a variety of roles in the various sports. We've got 3 or 4 interviews on record with him regarding his involvement in figure skating championships around here. For me to suggest what he has and hasn't done and what anybody else at the university didn't do in regard to that, I don't think they thought at Penn State that was going anywhere either, and it brought down, one of the legendary coaches in football history. Where this goes at Michigan State, I don't really think anybody knows because, in my 47 years on the air, I'm in uncharted waters with this because I've been in NCAA investigations. I've been in other coaches that have had issues for not winning and getting fired. I've had players get in trouble that I've seen. This is completely uncharted waters. And so for me to predict where it's going to go, other than the fact that where it is right now isn't very good. The Board of Trustees meets in regular meeting tomorrow morning, and who knows where all that's going to head.
And the price tag. It's just be astronomical.
The price tag, I mean, you can only, if we had a lawyer on from a California-based firm the other day, and he represents at least 32 plaintiffs, and he told me that he thinks the list of plaintiffs before this is all said and done will go between 200 and 500. What if they all have a case, and what if they all need some kind of compensation? Do the math, if you can do it.
You'd bankrupt, the university would be bankrupt.
I mean, like I say, these are uncharted waters, but things look more down than they do up.
All right, so let's go back to the football program real quickly. I mean, the staffer is
Curtis Blackwell.
Not exactly a secret. It's out there everywhere, right? I mean, this is a key guy.
Well, if you're covering a story like this, you have to understand how public university information works. His name behind the scenes had been determined, and the way it works with the university, you can ask the status of any university employee or student, and without detail, they'll tell you the status of that employee. So once his name got to the media in a variety of different ways, they went to the university Monday and said, what's the status of Curtis Blackwell? And that he's suspended with pay. That's what they said. So obviously, there you go.
And what does history tell you? Suspended with pay usually leads to termination. I'm not saying that he's guilty of anything. I'm just saying oftentimes that's where it leads.
Well, it could, depending upon what the prosecutor's office, I mean, is he going to get reinstated or is he not going to get reinstated?
And for people that don't know who he is, what is his function?
Well, he was hired out of Detroit 3 or 4 years ago, ostensibly to be a tremendous recruiting help in the Detroit area, of which he has been. He's an $84,000 a year employee. The job was essentially created for him to get him because he's influential with Detroit high school players. He's 39 years old. He had coached at several Detroit public high schools. What he did or didn't do relative to this incident, I have no idea. But my sense is the players are probably pretty close to him, and if something bad happens to him, what's the reaction of the players? When the players in Minnesota got in trouble in December, they wanted to boycott the bowl game, and ended up the head coach got fired. I mean, I don't know if there are necessarily complete direct parallels here, but you can see, cases elsewhere at major schools where trouble has continued, and whether, this is going to continue here or just be another player's incident that'll get handled and on we go with spring practice, I don't know.
I don't know either. But it seems bigger than it feels bigger because of the other things going on at Michigan State. It feels more intense, and so then you're a 4-star player from whatever high school USA. Are you going to commit to Michigan State?
Well, I think, Steve, the angle of the issue of sexual assault in America has come into the forefront tremendously, far more. In the past few years, the National Football League's had a problem with its players with alleged sexual assaults and players getting into domestic issues, and the world takes it far more seriously, I think, today than maybe it did a generation ago for a variety of different reasons. And these incidents at Michigan State surround various degrees of sexual assault, proven or otherwise. But when they appear as possibilities, authorities take this issue seriously. And I don't think when Penn State's people were involved, they were in an era where they thought all this stuff was what you immediately run to the authorities and tell. I just don't think they came from that era where that was an issue. Today, it is far more of an issue, perhaps, than it was then.
Serious problems at Michigan State, and we'll have you back because, obviously, like you said, the end is nowhere in sight. Tim Stout, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for stopping in. Just a messy time in East Lansing in the athletic department there. 52 after. We're back in a moment on the Steve Gruber Show. Makes you wonder. Where do we go from here? Is it getting warm in here? Okay. All right. Let's see here. Here's a little something from my bin of strangeness just to close out the day because, well, I can. It's my program, after all. The husband of a Minnesota... Well, it is. Don't have to stare at me like that. The husband of a Minnesota woman who is allergic to everything, including her spouse, spent a year renovating their new home to create a safe space for her, but the smell of the new bathroom's pipes and the stress of the move have left her too sick to even stand up. For the past year, Johanna Watkins has been living in a friend's master bedroom, which was wrapped in plastic with the windows sealed. This comes from a local Fox affiliate, by the way. Her husband, Scott, was staying in a room downstairs and would only see his wife when transporting her to doctor's appointments or emergency room visits. She is also allergic to her parents, and it appears her 3 siblings are the only people who do not trigger any allergic reactions. Weird, right? Watkins was misdiagnosed 30 times before doctors determined in 2015 that she has a mast cell activation syndrome, which causes cells to release the wrong chemicals to the immune system to the wrong place at the wrong time. Weird. After being diagnosed, Watkins' body continued to develop new allergies, which can cause her to faint or go into anaphylactic shock. At one point, her symptoms became so intense that the family Watkins was staying with realized they could no longer cook in their own kitchen. Scott, an elementary school teacher, has transformed their new home in South Minneapolis to a safe space for his wife with new paint, new floors, new furniture that is heated to mask any scents that could make her sick. Her built bedroom to include a positive pressure system to keep the air fragrance and allergen-free. But despite all of his efforts to make minimal contact with his wife during the February 3rd move, the intensity of the day and the scent of the new pipes almost resulted in a trip to the hospital. You know, I've had, I've had similar effect on people from time to time. Not quite that bad, though. I've seen them go, apoplectic when I'm around or say something that they don't quite understand or agree with. That's all I got for you for today. So until then, keep the faith, my friends. I'm Steve Gruber. This is The Steve Gruber Show.